Okay, so what you see in the vise, and I'm going to butcher this name, so forgive me, but it's called a Hydropsyche Caddis. I don't know actually how you pronounce that, but that's about as close as I can get with, and I still sound like a robot. So this fly is actually fairly easy to tie, and before we get started, we're going to actually put our dubbing blend together. So what I have here is some Antron. I've got it in 3 bags. When I'm blending numerous types or colors of dubbing, I should say, blending being all the same material, I have found that this is a really easy way to do it. You just cut a little one of the corners off of a little bag. You can line them up so that they're kind of like this, and you can start to tease out the dubbing to get the amount you want. Sorry, I know I'm a little out of camera. I've got stuff in my way. And so what I'm shooting for here is just a basic 50-50 color. So, or I should say, well, 30-30-30 or 33-33.33, however, whatever you want to say. But an even amount off of each one. And so when I pull them away, I should have about an even amount. I came a little heavy on the yellow, so I'll take that out of the way. Actually, this dubbing is, I've got this pulled out a little further than I normally would. It just keeps coming out. I think I cut the corners off a little bit too much. And you can kind of get them together like that. I'm not sure if you can see the colors super well there. And now I'm going to put these all together and we're going to blend it. What I'm shooting for is kind of a golden beige. Now you can obviously buy something that color, but if you don't have quite the color you're looking for, this is a good option. So this is all Antron, and it's kind of it's a medium coarse dubbing. You can see there's a bunch of squiggly lines in there. It's not like a super fine, but it's not as thick and as rigid as like an ice dub. So in order to blend this, I'm just going to pinch the very tip of it. I'm going to leave my left thumb and left index in place. I'm going to pull away with my right hand and let it stretch. I'm going to bring back the rest of the clump with my right hand. I'm going to line them up so that the tips are together again. And I'm just going to repeat this process until I have basically a uniform color. You can do this with a lot of different kinds of dubbings. The coarser the dubbing gets, I have personally found it can be a little bit more difficult to reach an even color or uniform color. So it can be a little bit more of a challenge. You can kind of twist it around and play with it, realign it, just grab, pinch, pull, realign, grab, pinch, pull. So there you go. This is a good way to do this. You can also just take it directly off the bigger bags of dubbing if you wanted to. I just usually move it into the smaller bags. They're a little easier to handle and whatever. So there you go. So I guess once you have your dubbing blend put together, or I should say first, this would probably be a good place to pause the video, and then once you have your dubbing blend put together, hit play again. So let me bring this back into play, the vise that is. Go ahead and get that fly out of there. What I'm going to be tying on here is a 14 scudded merger hook. Some people call it a caddis hook. There's different names. There's some slight variations, but basically we're looking for the profile and the bend on this fly. Excuse me. And that's really about all that we need. You can probably tie this on a straight shank as well. So without further ado, let's start tying the fly. The thread I'm going to be using, first of all, here, I'm using a scudded merger SE1 size 14 from Lightning Strike. The thread I'm using is a 30 denier GSP from Vivas. And the Viva's thread can be a little slick, so I'm going to run my thread right through my wax a couple of times. I'll choke up on it too to make sure I've got wax coming down the shank. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to start my thread about a bodkin width behind the eye. I'm going to start to, whoa. See, even with wax it can be a little slick. I'm going to start to wrap back. When I get to about the hook point, I'm going to stop and trim off my tag. Next, I'm going to get some really fine monofilament right here. I've got some 0.10 millimeter Vivus monofilament. You could use 2.0. You could use, if you get some really fine, 2-pound test or something, just of Berkeley or something, that'll probably work. And now I'm just going to tie. I'm going to tie this in on the side. Let me try that again. It's starting to twist on me. I'm going to tie the rib on my side, and I'm just going to slide it back until I'm basically where my thread starts, which is right about where my fingernail is here. Excuse me. And I'm going to start wrapping back. And for me personally, I like putting the rib underneath the fly. You can really start it wherever you want. I'm not sure it makes all that much difference, but I just like the look of it. And I'm going to wrap this back until when my thread dangles down, I'm just about in line with the inside part of the back bend of the barb, or of the bend, I'm sorry. The inside part of the bend, so you can see where my thread's laying there. Next, I'm going to take my thread and wrap back forward to where we started and just tie in the rest of that monofilament. I'm going to put this in a clip sitting behind me so it's out of my way. And I'm going to start working back. When I get to about the hook point, I'm going to put in the backing. Excuse me. What I have here is just about a 1/8 inch wide piece of a Ziploc bag. You can use that. You can use the stretchy scud back stuff. And I'm just going to trim it into a little point, and I'm going to start tying it in right there. And I want to make sure it stays on top. And one way I can do that is just by holding it in place and loose turns over the top. And if you tighten too much as you come around, it wants to move. So tighten as you're pulling up on the back side where my bobbin is here. So as I come around, loose, tighten up over here. And you can see I'm using my finger to kind of help keep what's going to be the shell back in place. And yeah, and you can kind of jump your thread a little bit here. There's no need to have touching turns or anything right here. I'm going to take it back down to where the rib started, and I'm going to bring this guy back up to about the hook point, or if you want to, if you feel more comfortable, it's easier for you to do, you can come back up to the front. Next, I'm going to put in a dubbing loop, which is about I usually make them about 5 inches on a fly this size, just so that they're easy to get a hold of and all that. So once I've made my dubbing loop, and if that was too quick for you, I've got a video on dubbing loops and how to make them. Just for expedience time, I'm trying to slow it down, or speed it up rather. I'm going to tie that dubbing loop in on my side, and then I'm going to bring my thread all the way back up to about a bodkin width behind the eye. You can put in a whip finish there if you want. If you want to keep that from slipping around, that's fine. If not, that's fine. Whatever works for you. Next, I'm going to bring in my dubbing spinner, and I'm going to put it in between my thread on my dubbing loop just to keep this guy open. I'm going to wax both sides. So what I'll do is I'll just do it at the same time. Just run that wax all over the place. If you got any stuff sticking off, pinch it off. Don't wipe. You're going to wipe the wax off. Okay, I'm going to turn my vise up on the side. And I'm going to move this back out of the way. So what I have here, if you've been following along with the dubbing classes that we've been doing over at Fly Tying for Beginners, this is basically just a gauge here. And so what we want to do is we want to take our dubbing blend that we put together, and we want this to fit inside this triangle, not this box up front here, just the triangle itself. The center black line, oops, sorry, I keep going out of camera, I've just got too much in my way. That center black line just represents your thread and the dubbing loop. And you can go a little bit thicker. Ideally on this, I mean, Antron lays pretty flat, and this bug is supposed to be pretty flat, so I couldn't really put a measurement to the height of this very well. But if you think that you need a little bit more, which you can always get rid of later if you needed to. Actually, well, no, I guess you couldn't, because we're going to build this all in one thing. So make sure you do it right the first time. Or at least try your best. So maybe put a little extra in there. If worst case scenario, your fly builds up a little bit. If you overbuild it, you can always undo the dubbing loop and trim it off. So there we go. And so this is really meant to be more of a guide to fit in that shape and profile. If you're a little over, you're a little long, that's all okay. Don't worry about that too much. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here with my scissors and cut it off on that black line, so that I'm just left with this triangle. This is a tapered dubbing, so we're going to make a tapered dubbing loop. I want the small part of the triangle all the way up here by the hook shank, and we're just going to get it in there. And so once it's on your wax, it should hold. Now, I'm going to move this out of the way again. Okay, so next we're going to come to this little box here. And this little box is actually going to be for our legs and thorax, which I'm going to make out of a hare's mask. There's, depending on the color you want to go for and everything else, you can really decide where you want to pull this from. If you haven't added two materials to a dubbing loop before, I hate to say almost over add material, because it can really affect things, but at this point, if you over add material, there's ways to deal with it. And so you want to kind of pick the color that you want, the firmness that you want. Now, on the hare's mask, there's going to be a lot of fluff down below, a lot of under fur, and if you want a really big, thick, bushy thorax, you're going to want to keep that under fur in. If you want some more spikiness to it, you're going to want to get rid of the under fur and then maybe double up on your guard hair, which is just these finer hairs that are coming off the top. And so it may take a little bit of experiment to see what works best for you. So I'm just going to come in and snip some out. So I have a little, see it there? I have a little piece about like that. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of some of this bulkier stuff. Now you can really see that under fur. And so as I pinch the tips, I can pull that under fur away. A lot of people save this stuff. It's actually great dubbing. So you can kind of pull that stuff away and store it in a little bag somewhere. And this makes great dubbing. So now what I'm looking to do is, I guess sometimes easier said than done. I want to try to get these tips lined up as evenly as possible. And the best way I found to do that is actually literally just come in with your fingernails and you pinch and pull any excess material until you have what you're looking for. And I'm going to fold this material back on top of itself, kind of short, and I'm going to do that again. Kind of pick out the long ones so that I have something about like that. So when I bring my card into play, I want to put this on the side of the square. And now you can see where my thumbnail is over here, running along that square. This here is what you're going to have left for your legs. And so you need to make a judgment call if that's going to be leggy enough for you. And again, it's going to take some practice. If you feel like this is not enough, then you may need to do this process one more time. Set this stuff aside, do this process one more time, and then stack them on top of each other so you may have enough. We'll go ahead and do that just to be on the safe side, especially since I'm shooting a video. Or if you wanted to, you could come in and get some different color. We'll come in and get some different color this time. And we'll mix the colors together or blend them together. So again, I've got this darker clump here. Can get my tips lined up. I didn't really grab much under fur on this one. So now I've got both of these. I've kind of got a tan side and a dark side. And I'll line these up into that box area like so. I'm going to come in and trim this out straight alongside of that box. And we don't need to blend this together per se. We're going to leave it just like this. And then what we're going to do, let me zoom out. What we're going to do is we're going to add this in just below our tapered dubbing material, and we want to just carefully push this over to the side and get it fairly close. These tips should line up very similar. If I can get my hand on it, to the way this looks. So you've got your triangle, and then you've got an edge that comes off of it. I'm pretty close here. I was going to try to use that card to tap it over. Once you have that, you're going to pinch below, and we're going to twist our dubbing spinner quickly. Let's see if you can pull it up so you can see it. So you can see it rotating here. And once it starts to rotate up, or spin up, I mean, it's going to start transferring up into the dubbing loop. You can just let go and let it all spin. Now this kind of almost looks like a curly slide. That's not good enough. It needs to be spun more. It needs to really kind of flare out everywhere. And if you want, you can run your fingers up. You can see it twisting, pinch, twist again. And when I zoom in, you'll be able to see. There we go. Let me zoom this in a little bit here. Now you can kind of see I've got a tapered body right here, as well as I've got all of my thorax sticking out here, which is really more of like a brush look now. And that's exactly what we want. I'm going to go ahead and lick my fingers and kind of twist this dubbing together a little bit, just to try to help get some of the hairs down, just a fuzz. It's already pretty good. And next what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a pair of hackle pliers. I'm going to clip onto my thread. I'm going to trim it out below my hackle pliers. So now my hackle pliers have everything. My dubbing spinner's gone. And I can start to dub this fly just by rotating. One of the nice things about putting material like this into a dubbing loop is that you don't have to really worry about which way you rib the fly. It's already all trapped. So I'm just looking for You know, basically touching turns. And your antron dubbing should get up to about where the back of the thorax would normally start. So about 2 to 2.5, maybe 3 at the most bodkin widths behind the eye of the hook where my thread is. As I start to move into my hare's mask, I'm going to take a half turn, lick my fingers, draw the material to the back, half turn, wet fingers, draw to the back. And I'm going to keep doing this as I go around. And it's going to create kind of a soft hackle look almost to it. Now when you get up front, because we want to bring this all the way up to about a half a bodkin width behind the eye or so, maybe about full bodkin width. One thing you can do to help trap everything to the back is, if you can see that I've got all my material has been palmered. So now I'm down to just thread. And I can use that thread that's on my hackle plier to wrap over, catch it, and keep everything drawn to the back. Once I'm happy, I'm going to pull that to the front side of my thread. And I'm just going to make 2 turns over. I can get my hackle pliers out of the way. And just like that, you locked everything in with 3 turns. And I'm going to add just a few more wraps because we have to make room for our shell back and our rib. So there we go. So at this point, you should have about a bodkin width between your thorax and the back of your eye. I'm going to come in and trim this guy out. My tag, that is. Okay. Let's put a couple more in. Okay. Next, I'm going to wet my fingers. I'm going to start drawing everything down. If it's all wanting to shift one side, you can take your thumb, kind of wiggle it around so that it evens out, and then pull it down so that you're getting hopefully more or less of the same material on both sides. Kind of like so. Something like that. And we can address all this extra stuff in a minute. If you're wanting color on your back like the fly I showed at the beginning, what I'll do at this point is I'll come in with like a brown marker and I'll actually just color the hare's mask itself. I don't know if you can see that very well. But I just kind of dab some on there, color the hare's mask itself. Now when I pull my shell back over, what it's going to do, as soon as it touches, it's going to get a hold of all that coloring. You can kind of see it there. And I think it looks cool. It helps move the color around and down to the sides and so on and so forth. So I'm going to bring this over. Whoop. I'm going to do 2 loose wraps. You can see I'm kind of holding the shell back, sort of straight out. Otherwise your thread could slide down. Do like 2 loose wraps over. I'm going to pull it to the back and place a couple on the front. Now if you need to, during this, if it's encroaching on your hook eye, take your thread and pull to the back like that. That's going to start moving your shell back to the back. We can always clean this stuff up later, or you can leave it too. I mean, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I'll put a couple more wraps on right on top. That guy's locked in pretty good. I like my fingernail clippers here to trim that out. So overall we're looking pretty good. Got a little bit of stuff coming right off the front. You try to wet your fingers and tie it down, clean it up. That's pretty good. All right, so at this point, it may be easier, so you don't lose everything, just to put a whip finish in. Just do a couple. You don't need to get crazy. That'll stop your thread from sliding around on you. Because what we need to do is lick our fingers again. I know we're licking our fingers a lot here. And we're going to start drawing all this material down. And we'll size it later, but we need to kind of draw this back forward. And down. Just so it opens up room for us to rib the fly. Now again, you can rib this fly either direction as long as it's been put in a dubbing loop. Or the body of it has. So I'm going to do one full rotation, or maybe even 1.5 around the back of the fly down here. That's going to give support to everything in the back. And now it's also going to allow me to easily bring my rib up onto the body. And we want loose turns over so we're not moving the shell back around. When as you come around, pull down. And also you can, as you're moving forward, slightly increase the distance of each turn. You don't want to go too much. What I like to try to do is have my rib line up with the back of the thorax. So you're looking at that last turn a little too close. There we go. But you're looking for about 4 or 5 turns in the back. Next, from the back, I want to kind of wiggle this through. The rib, that is. I'm going to wiggle it through. And you may have to kind of fight to get all that stuff out of the way. And you're going to do one. And if you only really need one. So if you're going to do one, do it in the middle. If you do two, do one kind of towards the back, one kind of towards the front. And you just have to kind of negotiate around all the hare's mask. So I'm going to bring one right over the top, right, so you can see where it's lined up. It's lined up vertically with my tying thread. I'm going to bring it over and jump it in front of my tying thread. There we go. I had to try to get some hair out of the way. So now it's, even though you can't really see it, it's on the front side. Now I can grab my thread, place a couple of turns over. I'm going to draw the monofilament to the back. I know this is kind of a long video, but it's actually, the fly is actually pretty easy. Building it all in one shot, though, that's where it gets a little difficult. And once you've done that, you can trim out your mono. Okay, now to finish the fly, we're going to do a colored wet whip. I'm just going to take my brown marker, color my thread. I'm going to grab some super glue with a brush. Just going to run it along so that you can kind of see it bead up there a little bit. And now I'm going to place a whip finish in. Uh-oh, I missed. There we go. Right here. And this is going to form the head and the color and everything all at one time. There we go. See it all bubble up there, which is fine. I mean, that just means that the glue's working around. That's what you want. You can wipe it away with your fingers. Pull tight, trim off. You're good to go. If you get a bunch of glue up in the eye, just find something on your tying desk. Here's just a little feather stem. And, run it through the eye. If you got your monofilament handy laying around, you can do that too. Now, the only other thing to do, is because all that glue's starting to set, is we're going to draw this forward so that our legs are hanging down. And I'm going to take my fingernails and I can pinch and pull the legs to the length that I want. Typically on this guy they run just like right at with the hook point, or maybe just a fuzz lower. You don't want to have them too short. You don't want to have them too long. So you just kind of pick at it and play. Don't use scissors. Use your fingernails. Your fingernails are going to keep a lot of that bugginess in there. So anyway, that's it. That's how you can tie a Hydropsyche Caddis in one shot. Give it a try. You can switch up your materials a little bit if you need to, but hopefully that helped you with some blending some dubbing and some different techniques, especially if you've been following